The Liberation Organization in Southern Africa will be monitoring the outcome of the elections in Mozambique. In May this year, the African National Congress in South Africa lost its absolute majority, sending shockwaves through the region and the continent. So all eyes on Mozambique and Frelimo's performance. For more, we're joined by SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. Good evening, Sophie. So the ANC has deployed a strong observer delegation to Mozambique, I suppose suggesting that this, as many commentators have said, is a critical period for liberation movements, even when we look at what the electoral outcome has reflected for the ANC itself here in South Africa.
Yes, this is an important election, particularly for the liberation organizations in the SADC region. The ANC losing its majority led to many liberation organizations on the continent in general fearing that they are indeed being disseminated, and therefore they are looking at the ANC to see how it will renew itself. But elections such as these ones are quite important for the ANC, perhaps to interact with its sister parties in the region to revive itself. I spoke to the ANC chairperson of the subcommittee on international relations, Sophie Mokoena, about this election, and also my observation that the ANC after election, it is working very hard to revive these relationships with the sister parties on the continent, particularly in the SADC region, because the ANC will be able to understand some of these parties who have been able to remain in power. When you look at Chama Penduza of Tanzania, 50 years on, how did they renew themselves? And many others, because remember, South Africa was the last country in the SADC region to be liberated. And therefore, most of the parties that fought for liberation and were given power by the people in their respective countries have been able to maintain their dominance. But let's take a listen at what Nomvula had to say when I said to him, was this a rude awakening call that has led to them really working hard to really get information and experience from these organizations?
You are quite correct. This is but part of organizational renewal. The very reason that the National Executive Committee resolved that one of the officials in my person will be the head of international relations. So it's a day-to-day work, but of importance is to reconnect with those that have shared the trenches with us and also be with them during times like this one. You also are correct, because we're not only looking at economic diplomacy, but the renewal of the party, learning from how the comrades in Frelimo, the comrades in ZANU-PF, the comrades in the Sandinista movement in Nicaragua, the comrades in the Communist Party of Vietnam have actually gone through their own renewals, and us also learning from them. Yes, you are correct.
I suppose then it is a very important visit, or at least the delegation that goes there will be getting quite a lot, given that Frelimo has been in power since 1975 when it got its independence from Portugal. But then to the presidential candidates. Frelimo has a fairly young candidate, Daniel Chapo, at 47. Has age and gender become an area of debate in the country insofar as governance is concerned?
I think the whole region or the continent, because the population of this continent is quite young. And therefore, many people, particularly the young people, they want to see young people emerging as leaders. And Frelimo has been able to do just that, to the point where many people believe that the party will be able to perform better this time. But when you look at countries such as Tanzania, they've gone for a gender. You have the current president being a woman, and Ethiopia losing a woman president, and now you have a male president. Even though it's ceremonial, you now have only one woman president on the continent. Namibia, the SWAPO candidate, is a woman, and therefore there you are looking at the gender issue. But when you look at Botswana, you still have the current president who is going to seek re-election. So it is the issue of gender and also the issue of looking at young people taking over the reins. And when you look at what happened in Frelimo, this young person, very, very young, is getting so much support on the ground. And therefore, I think other parties will be looking at themselves to see, are they still relevant, or they should also look at fielding either women or young people and learning from parties such as Frelimo.
And it is quite interesting because ever so often, when many ask, perhaps even with the African National Congress, why they wouldn't field a younger candidate, the conversation or the response would generally be, it is the oldest liberation movement. So if you're going to look at succession, you wouldn't have somebody as young as 40 or 47 being a candidate that is fielded. But you see with Frelimo, since 1975, they felt that this was the opportune time to field a 47-year-old. They were quite brave.
Well, people who fought for the liberation, many of them are no more. It is good to have a generational mix, but you have to start a process of transition so that you are able to continue to survive. If you don't do that, you will have a problem. And the issue of succession is quite important. We saw what happened to the ANC in terms of failure to look at succession to avoid even divisions amongst the party members and bringing in young people with no baggage. And now you have a situation where now the ANC did receive this rude awakening call. And I think when Nomvula Mokoena says they are going to learn from Frelimo, they are going to meet other parties like Chama Penduza. How did they do it? Because they also went through a very challenging time. SWAPO, on the other hand, the last election was not so good for SWAPO. But now you see that there's a wave of interest in terms of elections in Namibia. And you have a woman now being a candidate for SWAPO. So you can see that interest. And therefore, I think many parties in the region can learn from other parties. You look at Zimbabwe. The ZANU-PF is a problem. Right now, already some are saying Mnangagwa must come back. How old is Mnangagwa? How Mnangagwa has been there during Mugabe, and now again, and now there's tension in the party because they don't know what to do. And that is why it's important, the issue of succession, to manage it well.
Sophie, always a pleasure speaking to you. That's SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena there speaking to us ahead of those all-important elections tomorrow in Mozambique.